Does a trip to Ireland strike you all? Well, you got about a year and a half to plan. All right, we're talking Florida State football here at the Voice of College Football, as we do each and every Wednesday, 6 Eastern. Lock it in. Make sure that you're here every Wednesday at 6. We got James Coleman on the line. Of course, you can catch him at Den Media Group. We're going to drop the link in the chat. And what you need to do is follow that link, and it's easy to subscribe. We make it so easy for you to, and James is going to let you know why you might have some incentive, some drive to do that very thing. And of course, we got Chris Frazier here from Spear Addicts helping us out as well. Chris, how you doing?
Pretty good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. James, what's going on?
Nothing, just traveling with the family, man. Trying to have fun and, work at the same time.
Traveling with the family. Well, that depending, there have been, you hear some war stories about people traveling with their family, but it's usually a good thing as long as everybody knows what to expect. That's always key there. All right, we'll get it ramped up with, even though, of course, what's going to catch my eye is this game that's been scheduled for Ireland. We can kind of kick that to the back burner because what's more important is who's going to be on the field in the next 3 or 4 years, not where you're playing the games, because I think there's going to be 100 yards, actually 120 yards of grass by 53 and a third, regardless of where they go. So even though I think that's kind of interesting, let's go with recruiting. And Chris, I guess we'll lead off with you in regards to big recruiting weekend for FSU.
Yeah, it was a really good recruiting weekend. There was a bunch of former Noles that were scheduled to come to help with the recruiting weekend. The majority, in my opinion, showed up. You had people like Deshaun Corbin, Jermaine Johnson, Keir Thomas, Jameis Winston, and a few others to mention that came. There was a couple that missed out because they were traded in the NFL or had some issues going, like Derwin James. He had a family issue to deal with. And then Jalen Ramsey was actually traded to the Miami Dolphins as he was going to head to Tallahassee. So he might as well figure out how to move to Miami because that's where he's going. But as far as recruit-wise goes, we had the biggest names for the 2024 class that's already interested in Florida State. Luke Kromenhoek came back and was a huge help to what Florida State was trying to accomplish with all of the movement as far as who we're trying to get in this class. And then Jalen Winston received a offer from Florida State this past weekend as Jameis was on board with us. So Florida State's doing a phenomenal job of getting the top names on campus. When you go from Luke Kromenhoek and then you've got your 5-star wide receivers and then you've got your 5-star DBs and 5-star DNs and stuff like that. But what's different, in my opinion, is how excited they actually are. They come out of respect most of the time. Like last year, I think a lot of it was a respect thing. This year, they're actually excited to be there. And then we've got coaches that are, I don't want to say it the wrong way, but they're walking with a bigger stride than they had before. They have more confidence. And it attracts the young people. The more confidence you have, the more attractive you are to them. So I'm very impressed with what Florida State was able to pull off this weekend. It was a huge event. And I don't want to name certain kids because I don't have the list in front of me on who does not want to be spoken about, because there is a list of guys that did not want to be known to be there. So I will look that up while y'all cover something.
James, we've had enough conversations that I know when I ask you a question, you're always amazing in answering the question. However, many times it's much more important what you've got on your mind as opposed to what I'm going to ask. So I want you to answer my question, but what's on your mind is always important to me to hear what you've got on your mind. So I'll ask it this way to get us kicked off. These recruiting weekends, what we hear, there's got to be a deplorable, atrocious incident or just a bad experience for a player to come out. And we rarely see it where we know, okay, you didn't have a good recruiting, but otherwise they're going to say all the right things and say the nice things. So how do you come away from a situation like this and have a real indication that a player's leaning a certain way or had a good experience?
Well, one, you can measure it by how many times the young man has come on campus. So let's take a Cam Davis, for example. Now, people were very worried about his recruitment, but then when you sit back and you realize Cam has been to Florida State like 12, 13. Cam's been to Florida State more times than I have. And I'm alumni, and I'm from Tallahassee. So seeing that, and then you're hearing what he's saying, same thing with the Luke Cormahawk, same thing with some of the guys who are coming from the West Coast. Like there's a couple linebackers were interested in, one from Texas, one from Cali, that are coming out this way. And I'm just gonna go with the belief that everybody figured out how to get there on their own. I don't know this stuff, but I'm just saying, even if they didn't, that's a lot of time, that's a lot of energy, that's a lot of resources being spent trying to get come just on an unofficial visit. And then it's the idea of not just this class, but the younger classes. I think three people who always tell you the truth. Old people on their last leg, kids, and alcoholics. They're going to typically give you a version of their truth that's going to be uninitiated. So if we don't believe the 2024s, we have no reason to not believe the 25s and the 26s. And they're getting guys who literally the 26s are ain't nothing but babies right now. So it's just it's very interesting and odd, but it's also the consistency in the message. If we go back and we look at what happened under the tag times, off-season unofficial visits weren't the norm like this. It was more the big recruiting weekends during the summer. So his camp and that last weekend in July. And out of those, you still heard things like unorganized. You heard things that were, and I think some of that had to do with the media. But even now, when you have the media, it just shows when you have the media, the staff, and everybody's on page and they're creating this narrative that's nothing but hype and nothing but not mysticism, but nothing but hype and encouragement. It comes through. And then one of the things that I like to do, and people can call me whatever they want to call me. I'm not a fan. I'm not a media. I'm family. It's a difference. But when I get a chance to talk to some of these guys, I talk to them in a position of a guy who, yes, I would love for all of them to come to Florida State, but I want them to be great men. Young men. They're going to have to coach my kid one day, maybe. They're going to have to do some other things. So when I'm calling John Cromahawk, Luke Cromahawk's dad, just to figure out, hey, I want to talk with him. I want to chop it up. He's telling me these things, and he's just like, he's excited. One of the things that we have with these kids are being so independent, and we're teaching them to be brands, and a lot of their parents have never walked this path before. We see them to be so independent, but recruiting is still about winning mamas and daddies. And when the mama and the dad are very, very sold on this place, very few kids going to go against their mama and their daddy. And when you got John, who's saw it from a 3D multi-generational approach. You saw the past knows, and you saw how Jermaine talked. You saw how James talked. And then he saw his the current nose, then he saw the future nose in his son, and he could see his son walking down that path. And I think that's what they're doing the best job of right now, is allowing people to see their son, and then they're surrounding them by success. Jermaine Johnson being an All-American, getting his brick laid in there. Jameis Winston being arguably one of the best quarterbacks to ever play at Florida State, one of the best college football players ever. And they're both playing in the NFL, which is the apex of what this dream can be for you. I mean, I guess really the top would be the Hall of Fame, but we won't see that for another 10 years for either one of them, 10, 15 years for either one of them. So to see the guys who have gone through the path, and you saw two different variations of it. One who came there as a freshman, had the red shirt, played another sport, figured it out. And then you see the other guy who went to a junior college, went to Georgia, one of the top programs in the nation, but got his accolades at Florida State. So as a young man, you can see, okay, well, I could bypass and I can go the long route, or I can cut all the BS out and go straight here. And when you have some of the top defensive ends in the nation, when you have some of the top quarterbacks in the nation, when you have some of the top wide receivers in the nation, some of the top DBs, and you mix them in with guys, again, another one like Ja'Shawn Corbin, who a lot of people don't really bring up. But Jay Sean was a phenomenal running back here at Florida State. Didn't get it done at Texas A&M, but got it done at Florida State. Wish he would have came back for another year. That'd have been crazy to see him, Trey Benson, Trayshawn Ward try to figure out how to get it done. But I think that's the way that the recruit. That's how you find out who's real and who's not. And then outside of that, recruiting is something that you have to continue to do. It's like it's a relationship. If you stop, you may not talk to your girl every day, but if you don't talk to her for once every 2 weeks, I'm pretty sure she's going to have another guy creep in there that's going to give her the attention that she seeks. But if you're able to, make sure you got her every other day, or you got that thing managed real well, she likes the color red and likes roses, you make sure she gets roses every now and then, you're going to still be in there. And that's pretty much every coach that I've ever heard talk about recruiting in a off mic situation always says recruiting ain't nothing but running game.
And that yellow jacket comment you made about the Hall of Fame, that is no stretch. All you have to do is watch Derwin James play. We've known about Jalen Ramsey for a long time. Man, Derwin James, my goodness, that guy is a freak beyond belief, which we already knew, but he also transferred that into NFL production. It's crazy how good he is.
I mean, like Jalen Ramsey, they didn't end up not coming. They were supposed to come, but they had, it's very difficult. All season is a combination of them training, getting better. And then this was the first week of free agency, so they probably needed to be where they needed to be at because they got a call. Obviously, Jalen just got traded to the Miami Dolphins. When you look at Jalen Ramsey, a guy who's been highly touted since he came out of Florida State and has not disappointed. His worst year, what everybody thought, was last year, and he was still ranked the 5th overall DB in the nation. In the NFL. Probably should have been an All-Pro, at least a second-team All-Pro. But he was Pro Bowl. And when you look at a guy who I think the only time he didn't make the Pro Bowl was his rookie year. And his rookie year and this year, the only times he didn't make All-Pro. That is dominance. That is something that you can't help but see that he came from out of Florida State. So we have a lot of arguments and a lot of jokes and a lot of things about who's the DBU. Well, I'm going to put it like this. Ohio State and a lot of other schools may put out DBs. They get to the NFL. That's dope. But we put out DBs that stay. And that people that become household names that kids say they want to be. Like. So I think, obviously you talked about Derwin, who's just a freak of an athlete. I love and both good young men. And what's my guy's name? The DB that plays with Derwin.
Asante Samuel.
Yes, Asante Samuels. Yeah. Again, he played lights out, and he's the one that everybody forgets about because he's on the team with Derwin James.
Absolutely. Folks, appreciate you being here. Leave those comments and questions for James and for Chris. And we have left the Den Media Group link in the chat. Grab it because James is going to tell you why you want to do that.
Tell you now. Oh, that's where you get all my information from. That's how we all get the good stuff. My show, Big Games BS, is 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. We're getting early, somewhere between 9 and 11. Just push that alert button. It'll tell you when we're live, and we talk about some of everything. I do make fun of rivals sometimes in it, but I also give you some pretty good facts. At least you'll walk away with being like, all right, that's a troll, but that's some troll with some facts. And if I like something, I'm going to tell you the truth there. But we talk about all kinds of different topics. We have right now, we just want to get guys subscribed. If we get to, I believe we were at 1740 when the show ended. If we get to 2,000 before Friday, we'll give away $260. Originally, it was 200, but like the goal is for us to get to 2,000 and then to raise memberships up. But we're going to add more things, more content to that. Little shorts and reels. And then also there'll be some more shows like Sports Den. And then we'll have as some things progress on the business end that a lot of us are working with, we're going to add more shows to Den Media Group, and it should be good times.
Chris, you guys had a very exciting interview, very important one here in the last few days. Let people know about that one.
Yeah, so this morning we interviewed Athletic Director Michael Alford. It was probably one of the best interviews I've ever been a part of. I couldn't figure out, James, Why was he so complimenting toward you and me? Like, I didn't expect that at all. Like, he kept saying what we do, and I was like, why does he know? I know he knows why you do stuff, but I didn't know he knew I did anything. So it was weird. So I was wondering how he knew everything that he knew. But it was a great interview. I will say this: I put 2 clips of it up on Twitter. So if you follow me on Twitter at Spirit Addict, you can see those 2 clips. But if you're a member on YouTube, you can watch the full episode tonight or now. If you want to see it and not become a member, you can see it tomorrow at 7:30 is when it's being released. It will also be on WSBN TV. I will say this: in one of the clips that I put out today, I asked, was Florida State seeking the AAU membership? And that was confirmed by Michael Alford that our president is highly seeking to get the AAU membership.
Which is a big key. There's a lot of stuff that you can, if you got time, you want to break some stuff down, you can kind of sift through that and you'll come up with your own conclusions. But I think that's what makes Mike Alford very, very good at what he does. He's not going to give you anything that you're not supposed to know, but at the same time, you're going to feel like you're very informed. He answered a lot of questions about Florida State from a fiscal perspective and how strong it is, what Florida State's trying to do for current students. Like, he refers to them as the student and are well-rounded. They just happen to be athletes and other things. And he also interjects a lot of the things that he's done on a personal level. One of the things that I like when I do interviews, and I like the way Chris interviews, is partially I went to Florida State, but even when I do an interview with somebody else, I always want to talk about, like, if I were getting recruited here, if I were under his leadership, like what are the questions that I want to know? Like, I really don't care what fans want to know, which is no disrespect. It's just that, hey, those are the guys who are going through it, are guys who are like me, and I hope and I pray that they're guys like my sons will be. So I want to know, what the mentality is, what's the future, so a lot of our questions, and one of the jokes was like, Michael's like, I know James got some good. I said, I don't know yet. I don't really have any questions until you start talking. Once you start talking, then I know what I want to ask. And that's kind of how I go. But I think it was very candid and transparent. And that's one of the things that he's stressed to all the coaches. He talks about that. But I think that's a really dope way to be. His office is open. I know on Tuesday, I think that's when the next practice is. I'm going to go up there and we'll go give me some cookies, man. Because these cookies are supposed to be good.
Yeah, his wife, I would like to know how much money she spends on baking cookies, to be honest, because almost the entire student body has talked about it. And she's the only one that cooks it. They don't buy them. She bakes them. The other really cool part was after the show was over with, he was completely surprised that we spent an hour talking. Said it felt like 20 minutes. So obviously we did good enough to keep him entertained and feel like it was a good flow of questions. Obviously, I wanted to bring up us playing in Ireland against Georgia Tech with him, but we kind of started before that was released, so we couldn't talk about that online. So we didn't get any information as far as that goes from him, but we got plenty of information for other things as far as that went. And I'm going to take a step back real quick to where the recruiting questions were, because I got the list in front of me. But running back Cam Davis, so these are some of the verbal commits that showed up this past weekend. Running back Cam Davis, quarterback Luke Krummenhawk, safety Jordan Pride, and the kicker Jake Weinberg. And then the guys that were really after, 5-star cornerback Charles Lester, quarterback Michael Tolfalson, I think is how he says his name, 5-star linebacker Jaden Perlette, 2025 5-star DJ Pickett, 2025 5-star wide receiver Caleb Cunningham, 2025 5-star offensive tackle Mason Short, and there's like 14 more, but I'm going to just give you a couple. I'm going to go with the linebackers because me and James have been talking up what Randy Shannon has been able to do over the past couple of weeks. Because on our show, we've been kind of harping on him. Said that he needs to do better at getting better talent on the campus at Florida State. We were wondering where the recruiting was. Well, he had some huge he had Peyton Pierce, which is a 4-star. He also had Where's the 5-star linebacker? It's the kid that can't find his name. But anyways, he had some very good linebackers on this past weekend. And it was absolutely huge because if I was to say out of speaking to all of them, the linebackers seemed the most excited about what was going on.
So, Chris, getting back to, and I'd like to get James to chime in on this one as well. I'm going to go back to Alford for a second because in reading the rundown of the infamous Board of Trustees meeting from a few weeks ago and what he had to present to the Board of Trustees, which obviously kind of blew the lid off of what was going on with the ACC. Not that for those of us who are kind of dialed into where the media rights stand, we already knew that information. But for a lot of people, that kind of like opened people's eyes to, oh, wow, he's serious about this and he's serious about challenging the ACC and the revenue distribution, or hey, let's do something else. But in reading about that, I saw where on his first day on the job, he hired a consulting agency to be looking into all that. So obviously, way before he took the job, he knew this is the situation they're in. This is the situation we don't want to be in. And we're going to work at this and figure it out and get some information and be prepared.
Yeah, here's another thing that he did with the consulting crew and himself. Michael Alford is just like Mike Norvell. They're probably two of the most analytical people that there are. President McCullough gets surprised when Alford brings in analytics. It's so thick. All the analytics that he brings in is surprising. But that same group that you're talking about has helped Alford budget all the way till 2042. And Alford says in our interview that Florida State is, by his knowledge, is the only school that is budgeted out till 2042. So they're very serious about how they lay it out on what we're supposed to be. And the athletic director of a school that's in the ACC is not going to come out and just bash the ACC as they should. So he didn't, but he's making it known that the marriage isn't a one-way street. Both sides need to be happy, and Florida State's not happy. And he's just quoting facts of this can't continue.
Yeah, I mean, that Board of Trustees meeting was very intentional, and that's kind of what they wanted. And but as Chris said, even when he was the president of the boosters, he was looking at opportunities to be able to come here and change it and elevate it. I'll go back to an interview that I did with him on 36 Degrees when he first got here, and he talked about one of his key things, and I think this comes from him being a former student athlete, is nutrition. And he went around, he looked at it, and he was like, well, you know what? We don't have billions to fix everything, but we got enough to fix this, like to where they can at least get, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in here. And then he took a lot of energy. And it's a reason why his wife bakes those cookies, because he wants to know the good, the bad, and the indifferent and the ugly. So he's really spending a lot of time getting to know the student athletes and listening to them about, hey, this is what our fears are. This is what we like. This is what we don't like. And when you feel like you have more of a personal relationship, it don't feel like snitching on your coaches. It feels like, okay, I'm just talking to a guy that's going to really have the change, and we haven't had that. I like my athletic director, Dave Hart, and but I never had the relationship like what Mike Alford has, but I think relationship with the statistics, and then he builds those same rapports with other people, and the way that he was able to present it was in such a straightforward yet respectful way, to where he put the people who put the money behind the university, at ease with if we needed to make a decision, but also letting them know that we have to make a decision. And I think you've had Tony on here numerous times. We've had Tony on our show as well. This is not just a decision that's about building new locker rooms and transforming stadiums. This is situations where he's showing you the raw data that if every university in America were lined up and you took away the TV contracts, Florida State would be the 7th in the nation. We'd be the 3rd in the SEC when it comes to this. Now, so what happens is, and when you look at Florida State, people who don't know this, see, athletics, we always talk about the national championship, right? We know Harvard and Yale and those guys are going to win the national championship in nerds and book smarts. We ain't beating them. But there is something that we can beat and that we want to be. And we want to be the flagship program in the state of Florida. For that, we're really only competing against UCF, UWF, USF, but we're really not. We're competing against Florida. And in order to beat Florida, we have to at least be doing what Florida's doing or be able to mimic it in some capacity. We have to be in the AAU. We have to be able to compete. Like if Florida's getting $50 million more annually than Florida State from a TV contract, you multiply that over 10 years, that's $500 million. That's a significant amount of money that we're playing catch up. So when you tell the academia that, they have no choice but to be able to step back and respect that.
Jeff Hill, thank you so much for the contribution. Appreciate you being here. Go Noles, good show. Jeff, we appreciate your support. All right, let's move it on to the football game that's now being scheduled for 2024 to open up the season for both Georgia Tech and Florida State. We've seen this in recent years, and really the ACC has been the forerunner of this. A lot of Boston College, I think they played Georgia Tech there a few years ago. Notre Dame's made a trip a couple times over there. There was a game from the Big Ten here this past season in 2022, Northwestern and Nebraska, but now they call on Florida State and Georgia Tech in Dublin. I'm going to assume that's a week 0 game because typically they send those teams over there, give them week 1 off, and then they jump back into the season. So, Chris, your thoughts about this one being scheduled?
I personally love it for multiple reasons. It is expanding the brand into a completely different portion of the world. It's allowing us to showcase our university in multiple ways. A lot of people are wondering why it's Georgia Tech that we're playing. They would rather it be Notre Dame or somebody like that. I said, well, let's go fight one side of the Irish, not both. So, I mean, I'm extremely excited for it. I dropped a link on my Facebook and Twitter. They've already dropped the fan packages of what it cost for us to go over there and watch this game. So they've got packages ready for fans to go over there, and it's actually cheaper than I thought. For the plane ticket to stay and the game tickets is like $27.50.
So, James, back when you played, would you have cared about this? Would this have been something cool or just an annoyance, or what would have it been, you think?
I mean, it would be, one, it's cool for a couple reasons. Now, from a player's perspective, it's not as cool as it is from a fan's because they're not going to treat it like a bowl game, but it's not going to be like your regular season games, but it's going to be highly structured. So when you're on the road, you travel. Let's say they travel 3 or 4 days so you can get used to the time zone, climate, other acclimatization. They're gonna wake you up at 8 a.m. for breakfast. You're gonna have meetings at 10. You're gonna have a bunch of different things. Your schedule is gonna be laid out for you, and they may take a team-oriented trip to where you can go see something that's famous or something that's known to Ireland. But for the most part, you're really not going to be able to enjoy Ireland. But for Dublin and for these people, it's smart because you're getting people to come here who probably will have some money one day. And you know what you're going to want to do? You may see some, you may eat some shepherd's pie, and you might be like, man, I want to come back and get some shepherd's pie from that one place. And I got a couple grand in my pocket. I'm going to, in some time, I'm going to go do it. I like it because there is another opportunity for me to stamp my passport. So I can go see some stuff, and I can see Celtic traditions, and probably go get me now that I made sure I wasn't being racist. They wear kilts too. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but Irish people wear kilts. Go buy me a garnet and gold kilt, and I'm gonna go walk around and explore and do some cool stuff, and I'm gonna get some content. I could go. I'm in Atlanta now, so that's where we were going to play Georgia Tech week 1. I've done nothing but complain about the drive because it's not far enough for me to have to just fly. It's close enough for me to be able to keep my car or my truck so I don't have to rent something. But then the traffic is everywhere, so you don't want to go anywhere. So, like, Atlanta's cool. That's really what we're looking at if we would have gone there. Yes, more FSU fans would have been able to go, but let's put it in perspective. Georgia Tech has one of the smallest stadiums in the ACC. I got news for you. You probably weren't going to that game either. So watch it in Ireland, have a good time. Maybe we only have 2,000 to 5,000 people show up. But I know this. I'm going to be there. I'm going to talk with as many people as I can to be able to get there as well. And we're going to have a good time. I mean, I don't know how many black people are in Ireland, but I know I plan on making it at least one more. And I've got about 10 other people who said that they're going to come too. So my first question was, do they eat ribs in Ireland? And if they don't, then I'm going to tell my guy Shannon, we got to hook up some Guinness glazed ribs and have a good time.
Chris, were you losing it over thinking about James in a kilt? Was that what that was?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I figured.
The most part is I want to see it. Just seeing him walk around Dublin in a kilt would be. I'm getting plenty of Photoshop. Just it'll be fun. He's going to get caught from all angles, but mine are going to count.
Might be one of the larger kilts that they sell.
Yes,
maybe.
I figured I have to get it custom.
Yeah, he'll talk me into putting one on. I already know it's going to happen. I'll be like, oh Lord. But no, I really think it's great for the brand of not just Florida State or Georgia Tech, but for college football in the United States to expose that, as we have before. Like you said, the ACC's been pretty on the money of doing it, like the Big Ten did it in 2022. But it, to me, is expanding what all different brands we have in the United States. There's so many different traditions to what we do as well. And in Ireland, they're all about tradition. So if we're able to get Chief Osceola over there to drop the spear in the middle of the field, I'm sure that we'll gain some Irish fans. So I think it's going to be really good for not just Florida State and Georgia Tech, but for college football all the way around.
And again, I want to emphasize this. It's so many of these guys. Like, I was blessed to have a lot of in the Northeast. We didn't have money, but a lot of my family, like the boys, my grandmother's brothers, never left within 5 miles. So there was a concentration. So if they needed to get us to visit, they could raise $300, $500 to get us plane tickets to fly back to New Jersey from Florida. So I was able to get on a plane. I was able to see the world, or you see some mountain ridges, you see some cool different things on the flight from Atlanta to Philly or from Tallahassee to Atlanta. You saw kind of cool stuff. It opened your eyes. You'd be surprised at how many of these guys have never been on a plane until their recruiting visit. So that tells me that a lot of these guys don't have passports. So just the idea of having 120, and I'm gonna tell you this, most Americans don't have passports, which is funny how strong-willed we are about a lot of the things that we say we are when we've never been out of the country. Some people have never been out of the state, but to have 120 young men or more, because you'll be able to take more than what you would normally take to a game, because this is a week 0 game. This isn't a regular season game, so it's considered a bonus game. I think that's cool. They'll probably make sure these guys get suits. They'll probably make sure these guys have acclimated things. So what this does for recruiting is this is just another recruiting pitch that Florida State can say, hey, we're going to play international. We're international box office boys, not just United States box office boys. But I think like one of the coolest things is taking guys through. Well, actually, I say cool, but that's going to be interesting to see. Luckily, they'll charter a flight, but they still got to go through customs. They still got to go through these things. I hope they have a camera every second of the way in this, because it's going to be funny to see guys like Ayo or guys like, I'm not suggesting he hasn't, but see some of these guys, if he hasn't, to see his first experience going through customs and and also to see the customs officials look at them. They probably haven't seen this many large mammals come through in that manner. So I think, like I said, I think it's a very interesting life trip, and that's what college is about. I went to South Africa twice in college, and I don't think if I would have ever went to Florida State, I would have probably ever had that opportunity to go. So I think I'm very encouraged by it, even though part of me wants to see it be stateside, but then the other side of me, I can't knock the opportunity it is for the young men and young women who are trainers, because they'll be the ones who get a chance to party. It's the trainers they don't have to go to film. They have to be in the training room. They'll do their thing and they'll be out and like when we went to Boston College my senior year, which is odd because now I've been to Boston numerous times, but they went to go see the original Cheers. And a lot of the other stuff, and they're talking about this, and I'm like, man, I like Cheers. I like Frasier. I wanted to go see this stuff, but we're locked down in the hotel. But the sport does so much for so many people outside of the guys that we root and cheer for on a day-to-day.
They had almost 43,000 at that Nebraska Northwestern game last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the Dublin shows up. I mean, I went and did a little bit of research on it. And multiple times that, even when they brought the American soccer teams over, they brought a couple basketball colleges over. They pretty much pack it out.
Jason, appreciate you being here. Thank you for that. Come to the Big Ten FSU.
Please.
I mean, even though Offer can't say it, it's like you're saying it without saying it. Everything that is adding up, and then him to confirm that, yes, we're going after the AAU. Yes, we're not happy in the ACC. What else do we need to hear? Then he talks about his friends that are at the Big Ten without telling you they're at the Big Ten. Multiple people that he named today are Big Ten officials or administration. So it's like, and then you talk about President McCullough. This is his job. His one key focal is to get the AAU invite. I mean, I don't know what else has to be done. And yes, people have brought to me that there's SEC schools that are AAU members, but they didn't get it because of the SEC, and they were AAU members before going into that conference. So we weren't, and we're not. And there's only one reason we would get it, and that's it.
What is Alford's background? What set him up for this job?
So directly previous to this, he was marketing for the Dallas Cowboys. Previous to that, he was the athletic director at Oklahoma. Or no, let me take that back. He was something at Oklahoma, but his biggest athletic directing job was at Central Michigan, which he grew them 600% in revenue and caused the school to jump 74 spots in revenue ranking. And he hired 8 coaches in his 3-year tenure, and 5 of the 8 in the first year were coaches of the year. It's some of the things.
I mean, and when you look at his resume, it's he's been all over the SEC. He's been at he started as a GA at Mississippi State. He's been at Arkansas. I believe he spent the time in Alabama. But when you look at the pro stops, he's been with the Cowboys. I think he said, oh man, I'm missing the other. He talked about them quite a bit too. I think he's had two NFL stints, and a lot of it came in with him kind of not revolutionizing, but streamlining the processes. And I think with the way college is going, and we asked this question, college is looking more like pro, and high school is looking more like college. How do you navigate that? So what you want to do is have an athletic director that's actually been well vested in both of the areas. And one of the first things he did was he got us contracted, got our food, our training table outsourced. So what Florida State has is the same training table as the New York Yankees, the Dallas Cowboys, Real Madrid, Manchester United, and Florida State. Those are the only 5 teams that they actually service. So I think that's you get yourself pro level dining Then you get your pro level weight room, which they're going to have when they get the indoor practice facility fixed. Now, there are just some logistical things that are, and that's a question I wanted to ask. We'll get it next time. Just with it being a 3 to 4 year process before the the football only facility is built. As soon as it's built, are we looking at building the next one, or are we looking at redoing the more? Because it's like a keeping up with the Joneses. When you look at what Alabama's been able to do, when you look at what Georgia's doing, as soon as one building's up, the next one they may rest for a year, and then they're talking about the next building. But I think if anybody, I think that's really the thing that makes him different. And I don't see him with success looking anywhere else. I think and you got to go listen to the interview, but you see a guy who like, all right, this is my job. This is what I want to do. This is what my mission in life is. This is what I was called to do. And I'm called to make Florida State as great as it can be while I'm here, and to leave as much impact as he can. So I think the way they're raising money with Seminole boosters with Stephen Ponder, with the way that he's structuring things, I don't even think it's a situation where another school could come in and sweep him off his feet and give him a ton of money that we wouldn't be able to match, because he sees the importance in doing that for coaches. So I'm sure there's a way that they'll make sure he's getting paid pretty good to continue to bring Florida State to the standard of excellence. And that's something else that I really like, because, me, Mark, I've been talking about that standard for quite some time over here. And a lot of people give me heat about it, but they didn't score in both those end zones. They didn't bleed and sweat on that field. The standard is the standard. And that's something that Mike Norvell preached when he came in. And that was something that gave me hope. Now seeing Mike be able to live up to the words and the phrases that he's doing. But the same thing, if we did a count, like if we use that AI stuff, Chris, I promise you, he said standard about 25 to 30 times in an hour-long interview. So these guys are hell-bent on not just bringing Florida State to the standard, back to the standard, championship standard, but having Florida State be talked about as the standard. Like right now, the standard of all athletics, in my opinion, should be Alabama. But he wants Florida State talked about in that manner.
Two things you said, Chris, that hit me in particular in evaluating an athletic director is you got to be able to either raise money or increase revenue. So he did that at Central Michigan in particular. And number two, and I think this is a more difficult skill, is hiring the right people. Like to be able to interview and get the right feel for people and to be able to make the right call on who you hire for leadership positions. That's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, and in that interview, I asked him personally what it was that he looked in when he hires coaches or administrative people, whatever. And the detail that he went in on that was absolutely amazing. And the other one was Cincinnati that you were wondering about, James.
Right.
He was also at ABC for a while. I think that was it, if I'm not mistaken. But other than the other ones we said. But when we asked him about, what was it that he was trying to do at Florida State that was similar to how he grew so much money at Central Michigan? And then he made a point for us to know that Florida State doesn't get any state assistance. We don't get any funds from the state to help the university. If they want to build a facility, they have to raise the money. And what he's doing is a big way of gaining the money is doing this 20 for 20,000 members, booster members. And he says we're on pace to complete that by the beginning of the season. Would be the first time in FSU history that we've ever had 20,000 boosters. So whatever it is that he's doing in detail, which he did give some, whatever it is that he's doing in detail is very efficient because it's showing up year in and year out.
And again, everyone, we've dropped the link in the chat, and we'll have Chris explain the best way to get there and when you can see it.
The one other thing that he taught, and I've heard another athletic director say this, is that you got to have a Rolodex of 5 coaches for every sport. because he's like, and he said this without us even having to ask him, and he's like, you never know. So if they're being successful, other people are going to want them. Like Mike Norvell wins the national championship, the NFL will probably be calling, or somebody will. And I don't know if he'll leave or not. But if you sit there and you don't know who you feel would be the next best guy to be able to come in and fill, then you're going to get caught with your pants down. But he talks about, and I'll let you guys listen to it. It's a very NFL, very much so an NFL approach. Not NFL coaching. I've never heard anybody hire coaches like this, but it's on par with how they look at talent development. So it was extremely enlightening for anybody, again, who wants to be an athletic director and wants to get to know what it's like to be an athletic director. I think he did a great job of explaining that as well.
Yeah. And, the best part, I think, what he said was the way he interviews is he does such a thorough search that he knows everything about that person before he sits down and talks to him. It was just like when you're trying to get a free agent, it's the same thing as a recruit. You want to know everything about that person before you have to sit down with them. And when he said that, the amount of work that takes to get that type of research done on. Everybody thinks it's easy. You just Google it. It's not. You have to go into some deep diving to find out this person's this, that, or the other. So when he said that, it was very impressive to both of us because, I think I held my excitement down. I wasn't nervous at all, but excited. I was very excited. In the very beginning, I could kind of tell, I'm like, okay, how the hell am I going to start this? And it was cool because we had way more things in common than I knew. I have $3. He has $3. He's from Memphis. I'm from Memphis. I didn't even know he was from Memphis. Had no clue. We talked about rendezvous. We talked about Bass Pro, etc. So it was I never felt like it was an interview. It felt like it was a conversation the entire time with me, James, and Michael Alford. And he never gave a short answer. There was no such thing as a short answer. He spoke more than anybody, and it was very enlightening. And you can find that tomorrow at 7:30 on Spiratics on YouTube. So make sure that you go check it out.
Awesome stuff. James, let's tee you up for what people need to know about you and what you're working on.
Right now, the biggest thing is just we're trying to work to get to over 2,000 subs on Did Media Group, and continue to push those things. I always joke with people. I say you don't have to necessarily sponsor me. Let somebody else write the check. And the more subs we get, the more likely we'll have more sponsors. But the more YouTube will pay me when we get the views. And then if you like it and you like what we're trying to do, all my membership dollars go toward the MFTK Foundation. So, if you decide that you want to do, we have $3.99 all the way up to $9.99, $99.99. That one right there is a little bit more exhaustive. Like if you would have been able to, if you saw me partying at the Super Bowl, saw me partying at the Combine, what we're going to be doing for the spring game. Shoot, if you're one with me if you come over to Dublin, you get to do what I do. And a lot of times I don't know what I'm doing until I get there, but it's always cool. I can tell you that much. So, but other than that, just all my book bag drives, all this different stuff. Like right now, I have 90 kids going to the baseball game this weekend, and then I have 50 going to the softball game. So, those aren't as intensive as the football tickets, but those things cost money. But the group that I'm working with is Boys Town in North Florida, and that's a group homes. So kids who've been put in foster care. It was funny when I first started working with them. They were like, "Nobody ever gives us anything. Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Well, we're going to change that." I don't, again, one of the things that I always tell people why I love talking to Mike Alford, why I love being around the student athletes at Florida State, is not because I'm a great person. It's because I have kids, and I don't want those kids messed up stories and situations that they've had in life to ever come back and affect my kids. So what I want to do is with what I have power with is I want to change and affect people's lives because it'll make the world a better place for my kids while I'm making the world a better place for others. So that's it. That's basically all I want. At Did Media Group, go hit the sub.
And that link is back in the chat. So it's the most recent link in the chat, both Spear Addicts and Den Media Group. The link, can we make it any easier? You click on the link, you're right there. There you go. Chris, in addition to Mike Alford and that being released for everyone on Thursday night. But there is a way to watch that right now, correct?
That's correct. If you become a member on YouTube, which it's any membership, you can be $3.99, $9.99, or $19.99, and you'll get access to it immediately. So just join and become a member. Awesome
stuff. Everyone make it back here next Wednesday. You know what? Bring a friend with you, or 2 or 5 or 50, and tell them that we're talking Florida State football here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And again, the links are in the chat right there. Spear Addicts and Den Media Group with James. Guys, another amazing discussion. Appreciate all that you do and bring here to the table every week.
Appreciate you, Mark.